What motivates me competitively is just the fact that if you're out there, you want to do your best. You have one chance in life, and I've dedicated my whole life to BMX. So it really comes down to, if you're there, do your best. Kind of like this one guy wrote on my wall, man, if you don't want to be the best, don't try. I think that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool saying that you can look at on my wall in the warehouse. What motivates me at events is just the fact that there's a level that I like to place myself at, and it's never above what I think I can achieve. So really, if you're in an event, you got all the best guys, they're riding, you watch, you know what you're capable of. It's really just testing yourself, going out there and just trying to walk away with what would be your best day. I've ridden from day one, entering contests at 13. But right now, I think it's just, as long as I can hang and I can, give it my all, and, I compete to win. I don't compete to go out there and just, settle up in the middle of the pack and be like, that's cool. That's not my style. It never has been.
Today is an interesting day. The unfinished business checklist has a lot of games left to be covered, but the one we've got here is easily one of the most important for a wide variety of reasons. Before we get into the video, action sports athletes put themselves through a lot. The physical torment they go through stacks quickly, and sometimes their careers and even their lives are taken away early by way of serious injury. So I want to take this opportunity to remind everyone who rides, wear your helmet, wear your pads, wear your safety gear, wear an extra pair of pants if you need to. If you're out on a skateboard, a bike, a snowboard, FMX bike, or even a unicycle, keep yourself protected. It might not be the coolest looking fit in the world, but you'll think those pads are way cool when they're munching the concrete instead of you. Today, we're going to take a look at a few Dave Mirra games. If you've been around since the Freestyle BMX video, thank you for sticking it out for so long. If you're new around here, then welcome. I don't want to waste any more time, so let's get started. If you don't know who he was, Dave Mirra was the goated godfather of BMX and BMX Park. I already talked a lot about him during the first Freestyle BMX video, so if you want to know more, then go check that out. Long story short, he invented a lot of tricks that we see today. His legacy is timeless, and his spirit lives on memorially through the X Games Dave Mirra BMX Park competition. Now that we're caught up, first game today is Freestyle BMX for the Game Boy Color, developed by Neon Software and published by Acclaim in 2000. Have you ever heard of Neon Software before? If your answer was no, I don't blame you. They've got a pretty small list of games stretching from 1994 to 2015, and among all of them, Tunnel B1 might be the most recognizable. The team here was about 23 people in scale, which isn't as small as Natsume and Pro Skater, but it's not nearly as big as anything modern. I went through each team member's profile looking for some kind of action sports game experience, but there is none, and none of the team members went on to work on the sequels, so with my expectations set this low, it'll be almost impossible to be disappointed. Keyword is almost, because even when my expectations are pretty much nothing, I've still been disappointed. The career mode here is traditional. Go from map to map, completing as many goals as possible within the time limit to move on. The ideas are all normal. Score, collect stuff, do some tricks, trick on a thing, get a maximum number of tricks in a combo, and so on. As you move forward, you'll get bike upgrades, learn new tricks, and unlock more levels and goals. You don't get to pick a rider, unfortunately. Once you hit new game, you just select a level and you're off. You guys know me, I don't have any problem with any of this. It's so standard for me now that I've actually been caught saying the phrase go from map to map completing goals to move on in my sleep. It just works. But it doesn't work as well here because of this stupidly long password system. Like, what the fuck are these passwords actually? How is anybody ever supposed to remember any of this? Even if you wrote it down, look at how fucking long that is, dude. Just to play a video game, look at how long that is. The gameplay here is an entirely different beast. Much like the Tony Hawk games for Game Boy Advance, this game plays out in an isometric field with a variety of familiar tricks at your disposal, sort of. You can hop, grind, fakie, manual, spin, and do a variety of air tricks. You can chain those tricks together for a score multiplier, and all of the objects have proper collision detection. But don't mistake what I've just pointed out as evidence of being a great game, because we're pretty far away from great. We've just barely inched into good. First things first, the movement is limited to only 8 directions, so no free 360-degree movement like the Tony Hawk GBA series. Not the worst thing in the world, and it makes sense because this is the Game Boy Color, so the hardware wasn't as good, but the movement limitation is really the name of the whole game here. Touching a ramp automatically sends you flying, whether it's on the ground or vertical, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to spin on vert. From what I can tell, you just can't. Moreover, you can't spin while you're doing a trick, and if you can, I couldn't figure that out either. You remember how I said all of the objects have proper collision? Well, that's true, but the object layouts are so wonky and cramped and tightly packed together that you can't really combo many things, and sometimes hitting pieces that are aligned will just auto-bail. To make it worse, the layouts of every map are so compact that none of it feels feels fluid. There's no one space where you're just doing a thing and it feels like multiple things were meant to happen back to back. You can't see the design working here in the same way that it works in a lot of the 3D games. It's like trying to pull a cinder block through gravel with a single piece of yarn. You'll never make it very far, and you constantly have to replace the yarn because it breaks all the time. There's a good idea here. It's nowhere near as bad as Pro Skater 2 for the Game Boy Color, and it's proof that all 3 of the Pro Skater Game Boy Color games could have taken the isometric angle. Keyword is could have. I can't assume they would have been better that way, but I can make an educated guess and say at least one of them would have been a better game. All in all, it isn't the worst game ever. It tries as hard as possible to stay fun and faithful despite the hardware limitation. A few different design decisions could have gone a long way, but I don't hate it for what it is. It's not amazing, but not bad. Visually, also, not that bad. There's a reliance on using hard outlines and simple colors, which works in favor of the camera angle. American Skateland, the very last Game Boy game from the Tony Hawk series, put some extra emphasis on the objects in much this same way, and that went a long way toward making a better game. The maps don't have the best layouts ever, I mentioned that already, but there are almost no pieces covered or hidden by a wall, and everything is properly aligned with the perspective, so that's a point in its favor. My one problem with the visuals is that turning on the ground makes the screen look jittery, which really makes me sick, and it's kinda heavy. I tried to ignore it, but honestly, I can't stare at that for very long without my stomach flipping upside down. The soundtrack is bad, but not in the usual Game Boy Color way. It almost sounds like a platformer soundtrack with high pitches, some campiness, and it doesn't fit the game or the theme or really anything. Believe it or not, I don't hate it. I think it's so bad that it's funny. I would still rather listen to my own playlist, but for a few minutes, I got a really good laugh, and it didn't sound nearly as muddy as most other Game Boy Color games, so I'll give it a point for that. Once again, this is a Game Boy game, so I'm not expecting real footage. That would just be unreasonable. So with all that out of the way, I'll go ahead and give Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX for the Game Boy Color a 6 out of 10. I like the ideas. It's far from perfect, and it really only edges on good, but it's by no means a bad game either. It tries to be faithful, it functions, there are only a few real bugs, and they're only as annoying as the amount of times the player decides to hit the same spots. I think it's one of the more impressive games in the Color library on a technical level, but the few problems it does have really hurt it for me. The jitter, the vert stuff, the occasional input dropping, and the inconvenient object placements all take a lot away from what could have been a really amazing early handheld remake. I recommend checking it out still. The novelty alone makes it worth playing, and I'll probably go back to it for achievements in the future. It's just not great. Next up, Freestyle BMX 2 for Game Boy Advance, developed by Full Fat Productions in 2001. Already, I love this. If you don't recognize that company, they're responsible for the DS port of The Sims 2 Castaway, which is pretty great if you've never played it before. They're also the studio behind the Game Boy Color port of TJ Lavin's Ultimate BMX, as well as the Game Boy Color exclusive Tech Deck Skateboarding. Their specialty as a studio is handheld gaming, with a production life spanning from 1993 all the way up to 2021. And yes, they also developed the Game Boy Advance port of Aggressive Inline. Normally a team change from game to game would make me feel a little uneasy, but in this case, this was an upgrade. This was an IP getting put into the hands of a team that genuinely understood how to make it work. My expectations are a little higher this time in turn. The career mode is the traditional map-to-map via goals formula, and it does separate the goals by Am, Pro, and Hardcore, but there are a metric fuck ton of goals here, and it's more THPS styled than FBMX. I'm not adverse to just more pro skater type things. You can actually select a rider this time, they all have different stats. Selecting a different bike will change your stats more. There's like a shit ton of goals, and it all culminates in the one final complete all goals in the list goal, and you know, it's all really well put together. Not just because it's a GBA game, because this cup probably would have been impressive on every other thing too, but also because Freestyle BMX 2 is just a really fucking big game with a lot of world space in it. It would have been really hard, if not impossible, to capture all of it accurately, so what they did manage to pull off here is really good, and the compromises actually make sense. The gameplay took a while for me to adjust to. It's absolutely not bad, but it's got a learning curve that takes some time to work into the muscles, and it can be kind of awkward. There are 4 control types. I was playing type B because it felt the most comfortable, and it works like this. Holding forward will do a light accelerate, and holding A will do a hard accelerate. Releasing A will do a hop. Manual is done Tony Hawk style by up-down directions, and you can do a double tap up big air jump like you can in most games like this. The L button is used to grind and wall ride. While you're in the air, tapping A or B with a direction will perform one of the many available tricks, and there's a lot of depth here. We get double and triple direction tricks, specials, and pressing R in a direction will do flips on top of that. You can also do rolls by pressing the alternative grind button and moving left or right, so that's neat. You have full spin freedom while you're flipping, rolling, and on vert, so we're already better than the predecessor by a lot. While you're in the air, you can spine line transfer over large objects, and things like wall tap come back. As far as I can tell, you can't manual fakie, which is unfortunate, but not too detrimental. The real downside to this whole thing is that tricks can't be done while doing flips and rolls, and if they can, then I couldn't figure out how. The modifier button does make a return, so the idea is still realistically biggering a trick that you are already doing, but now with a lot more pro skater style things thrown in, because you can't just bigger everything all the time, and it doesn't look nearly as grand as it does in the 3D counterpart. The weight and speed of everything feels really good, and the object layouts keep the convenience, but also improve on the scale and placement. There's actually fluidity this time. With the Tony Hawk Game Boy series, I kept reiterating that I would just rather play any of the console counterparts, but that's really not the case here. There's a very limited variety of BMX games, and I think this one stands on its own, completely separate from the console version. It doesn't feel like Freestyle BMX 2 did, it feels more like the first game, but I have absolutely no complaints with that. That was a good engine, and finding a way to make it work here is insanely impressive. There are bugs, there are some weird collision spots, it's not perfect, but this is so much better than the predecessor that I'm more than satisfied. It met all of my expectations and then some. Visually, it's very similar to Pro Skater 2, and that means it has the same kind of low detail, flat textured 3D model contrasting on this pre-rendered background with a lot of depth and shadows, and I mean, it's not bad, it's just a little unusual on the eyes. I might have shit on Underground a little bit, but the skater textures did pretty good to make the skater look like they fit more in line with the maps in that game. The best part of this game is the maps easily. They're nice, they flow together well, and there's a good variety to it all. It's not the same list of maps, it's not full-sized, but not bad, full-fat, not bad. The soundtrack suffers from the same issues as the THPS series. The chiptune music is grindy, muddy, and not all that well composed, so it starts to get annoying pretty quickly. That being said, at least the music in this one compared to the predecessor actually makes sense. This has some grunge vibe to it. I'm not sure what the fuck was going on with that last one, but it was really campy, and this is a big step away from that. Since it's not as funny, and it has a familiar issue, I think it takes some of the charm away, but like with all of these games, you can just listen to your own music and ignore the soundtrack entirely. With all that out of the way, I'll go ahead and give Freestyle BMX 2 Advance a rating of 8 out of 10. It's kind of above and beyond. The physics for a Game Boy Advance game are extremely impressive, and it's got a wider variety of tricks than any of the Tony Hawk GBA games did. It works really well, it's fun to play, and the biggest credit is that I wasn't just thinking about playing the console counterpart the whole time. I was enveloped in this game by itself. It grabbed me and kept me. This is arguably one of the best GBA games I've played. It's solid, and it's a great entry in this series. I recommend checking it out if you're a fan of Dave Mirra, or of this game series, or just BMX in general. It's worth every second. Third game of the day, and surprisingly not the last one. Freestyle BMX 3, also developed by Full Fat and released in 2002. The last time we were here, I had to play a game called BMX XXX, and that game, while functional to some degree, was not good. It was originally intended to be Freestyle BMX 3, but there was this whole bad situation, and if you want to know more, I recommend watching my other Dave Mirra video. I actually found out doing research for this video that Dave and Acclaim settled on the lawsuit. They were supposed to hold the license until 2011, but Acclaim filed for bankruptcy just 1 year after the settlement, so that fell through. It was a suicide moment. Believe it or not, I understand why Acclaim wanted to make things edgier. They were trying to cash in on GTA, and the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox were trying real hard to spread into more mature audiences, so a game like BMX XXX was passable on those. Nintendo doesn't like mature audiences, though, beyond their Resident Evil partnership, and the extreme subject material of BMX XXX just definitely wouldn't have flown on any of their shit, so Acclaim had no choice but to just produce the game as it was originally intended for the GBA. Thinking about it, this really sucks, because Z-Axis should have been allowed to make the game they originally had in mind. They were great at what they did. Acclaim stuck their member in the mud with this decision, and Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX 3 wound up being a Game Boy Advance exclusive. Here we are today, looking back on it, even though I've literally never heard anybody talk about this game or even suggest it, and when I mentioned it in the other Mirra video, it seemed like it completely flew under the radar. Nobody even pointed out the fact that that existed. It just went totally into the vaporwave. I'm extra curious because of this, because even good games can go completely unnoticed. The career mode here is the same idea as the predecessor, but advanced in the most par for the course ways. Map-to-map goals move on, bikes, riders, stats, all of that shit. Completing goals this time around earns you cash that you can then spend on stats and new bikes to make your stats better. There are also multiple goal lists like before, separated into Am, Pro, and Hardcore, which is awesome. There's also Create a Rider, which isn't in any of the others. That's a totally unique feature to this game. A couple of the levels mirror BMX XXX in concept, but they're so far apart that it's easy to distinguish them as different games. And this really makes me wonder what a full 3D console counterpart would have looked like. Z-Axis knew how to step it up when they made new games. It's statistically unlikely that it would have been as bad as XXX was. I just really kind of want to see what that would have looked like. The gameplay this time around is better. Everything from the predecessor makes a return with a few new tricks, new trick modifiers, zigzag direction tricks, specials, double and triple direction double tap tricks, and now flips and tricks can be done simultaneously. Balance has been loosened to give it more fluidity and leniency, and the balance meter itself is big and bold and probably the best I've seen in a Game Boy Advance game. One of the best improvements by far is rotation. The rider looks a lot less awkward when you're flipping and rolling, so no more weird gyroscope body, and it makes it easier to land tricks. There are a greater amount of objects to use, they flow together a lot better, the hitboxes have been cleaned up just a little bit to make sure some of the weirder bugs were ironed out, and it feels more in line with the Dave Mirra games than the Pro Skater series this time. That being said, the Pro Skater influence is still definitely there, like up-down manuals, and some of the fluidity is just, like, it is way more on par with that in some places. They couldn't take as much advantage of the simulation portions of the game, so putting the focus on the fun portion of the game was the logical step forward for the GBA variant. There's one extra fun bit of depth here that I haven't ever seen in any of these games before, and I've played quite a lot of them. Maybe I have, but I'm pretty sure I've never seen this before. Every time you perform a trick, that trick earns its own experience points, whether you land or not. Do a trick enough times, and it'll not only open up more tricks, but it makes the tricks that you do faster and makes the landing window more loose. If you feel like you can't land a decade, it's because your decade stat isn't high enough. Can't do a low to ground medium trick, it's because those tricks need more work. So on top of the rider and bike stats, we now have individual trick stats, and I like this because it really just makes you feel like you're being rewarded for trying new things and getting better. I was just expecting it to be okay, but it's blown my expectations so far out of the water. GG, full fat. Visually, it looks about the same as before, but the maps are all so much better than whatever BMX XXX was doing. They're also better than the predecessor. The scale of the maps has been increased from small to medium to fucking huge. Full fat went above and beyond, and what came out was that of Pro Skater 4-sized maps with a lot of style, a lot of variance, and they get bigger as they go on. The riders and the bikes all look okay, the customization options for Creator Rider are really good, the collectibles are nice and contrasted just enough to always be visible, plus they put off shadows so you know exactly where in the air some objects are. It's not just a cut above the previous game. It's a cut above most of the THPS GBA games, and it looks better than some PS1 games I've played. I mean, it is really nice on the eyes. The soundtrack. Holy shit, it's actually music. It's not big, but there are appearances from Saliva, Green Day, 10-Foot Pole, and a few more. They're compressed for sure, it's noticeable, but it's not bit crushed so much that it's indistinguishable or painful, and even if it was, this is all I've wanted for a soundtrack in any of these games. Music and action sports go hand in hand, man. You mess it up, and you mess up the whole atmosphere in the process. I've been saying that it's better to just listen to your own playlist for a lot of the other GBA Tech Fantasy games, and that's because the composed chiptunes create physical discomfort. They make the games harder to play. This is a huge win. I still would rather listen to my own playlist because it's just become commonplace to do that with games like this, but this is actually a soundtrack, and that's a huge point in its favor. With all that out of the way, I'll give Freestyle BMX 3 a rating of 9 out of 10. It does nothing intentionally wrong. There are minimal bugs. The music is good. It looks good. It feels good. And the issues I had with the predecessor were hammered out. This game went so far beyond my expectations that I'm mad at myself for not playing it sooner. I wasn't expecting that much, truth be told. All I wanted was FBMX 2, again, with some bug fixes. I was expecting the opposite of what happened here. I was expecting it to be literally the same thing. Thankfully, this wasn't a case of bad game lost in time because it was bad. This is a much more depressing case of excellent game lost in time because the marketing was shit and not many people even actually played it. I recommend it to everybody who likes BMX, Dave Mirra, tech fantasy games in general, the Game Boy Advance, or just video games. It's a great way to scratch an itch that so many of us can never seem to get rid of, and I'm happy to have played it. We're down to the last game, and I need to preface this a little bit by saying it's one game with 2 releases. I will talk about both of them, but I'm gonna focus on one and just do a segment about what the other one changes. Cool? Good. Dave Mirra BMX Challenge, developed by Left Field Productions and published by Crave for the PSP in 2006, is a racing game with some freestyle stuff mixed in here and there. Imagine Tony Hawk's Downhill Jam, but on a bike. We've seen Left Field Productions before. They were responsible responsible for MTX Mototracks, which was, once upon a time, supposed to be Travis Pastrana's Pro Moto X. I did a whole video about just that game, right? I talked about MTX Mototracks already, so go check that video out if you want to know more about that. But we like left field around here. Crave is a little different. We're familiar with Crave, but they're actually scheduled for some ridicule this season. They've published ports of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, they published Razor Freestyle Scooter, and still on the list of games I need to play, they're responsible for World Tour, Razor Racing, X-Blades Inline Skater, and X-Blades Inline Racing, and MX World Tour. Speaking of MX World Tour, developer Jamie Hayes, who worked on that and this, and later went on to develop for Fortnite, The Order 1886, and Lone Echo, has a lot of great experience. There's good experience behind this game in general, but that's like a really long, kind of prolific list of games to have worked on. They're not necessarily action sports games, and I won't judge it by that, but I'm going to keep my expectations low, right? At least as low as I can, because I've heard a lot of bad things about this game. The team has changed, the publisher has changed, the reception was poor. I have no reason to believe this will be a good experience. The career mode here is interesting. The big two modes are racing and trick competition. The racing works exactly as you expect it to. You and a few riders make your way from point A to point B, and the objective is to place first. The trick competitions are infinitely more interesting. You go level by level, setting the highest score to move on. Both modes are completely lacking in any form of difficulty. There's no challenge to any of this, with requirements set low and rider AI being pretty bad. Honestly, I wasn't expecting it to be great. I knew what I was getting into, kind of, so it's not the worst. There are a lot of stages and riders, and it progresses at a good speed. It's not the worst thing ever. It's just not great. It doesn't even stack up to the other ones at all. It's not even close. The gameplay here is completely different, and I'll admit, I almost gave up on this game really quickly. But I discovered something interesting. If you go to the options and change the controls to Classic, this is actually a pretty good freestyle BMX game. It's certainly not the Z-axis flair that makes the originals so good, but it's not terrible either. It feels like a stripped-down version of MTX Mototracks. Keep in mind that I changed the controls to Classic while I explain this, okay? Holding the bottom face button accelerates and jump. There's no free spin, so you have to spin with the L and R buttons, which makes sense because this is a racing game and having air drift is actually kind of a good idea in theory, and they did the same thing in MTX Mototracks. This is built on that engine. There are double and triple direction tricks, there are multi-direction tricks, rotational tricks, and while you're doing a trick, pressing the opposite face button will activate the modifier. So there is a small but decent variety to tricks that you can pull off. There are no specials, unfortunately, and there's no special meter or height meter. You can grind by pressing the top face button, you can manual by double tapping up or down while in the air before hitting the ground, and the balance meter has a really nice lenience to it to make it feel like whole map combos are possible. There are customization items littered throughout the courses to make your custom rider look more interesting. There's multiplayer. It's not bad, okay? And here's the thing, even though the career has practically no challenge to it, and it's not as good as the other ones, the gameplay itself definitely isn't the worst thing ever. I mean, I've played some really fucking bad games in my time. You've seen it. I've crawled my way through some genuine garbage, and I don't think this fits in with that. The critical response and the very few user reviews make it sound like this game is horrible and close to unplayable. I disagree, and I think there's a good attempt here. It's essentially trying to downhill jam the Dave Mirra games, but it does it a little better. I think there's fun to be had. Visually, it's definitely worse than any PS2 title I've covered, but it's a PSP game. The textures are compressed, the models are a little lower poly, there's no real lighting or shadows or anything, but it does its job. The map designs are good, the trick animations are nice, and the riders don't look terrible. I've seen much worse come out of much better hardware and much better teams, so it's okay for what it is. The soundtrack is interesting. It's all composed by the group Android, spelled like and Roid with a Y. You know, I know it might seem like I hate composed soundtracks in action sports games, but that's only because I really kinda do. Licensed music is a staple in games like this. It's lunch meat without bread and calling it a sandwich to not have this soundtrack, you know what I mean? Without that thing holding it together, it's definitely still tasty, but it certainly isn't a sandwich. It's just meat. To its credit, the music in this game definitely isn't bad. It's nowhere near the muddy chiptunes that I've been so heavily exposed to lately. It's just not good either. I would have preferred some licensed music. There's no real world footage in this game, which, quite honestly, is fucking inexcusable. If there is, I couldn't find it anywhere. This is one of the smaller full-release PSP games in megabytes. There was plenty of room to include footage, and this was the PSP. which was capable of not only FMV, but whole-ass movies got released to UMDs for a long time. They were high quality too. Not having a movies menu to check out the riders and some real BMX just hurts the personality a lot. Then again, I wasn't expecting this game to have any good qualities, so this being the biggest problem really isn't that much of a problem. It's just a little sad. Finally, I don't want to do a whole run about the Wii port, but I do want to talk about it a little bit. The biggest difference here is the controls and the visuals. The Wii port definitely looks better and less compressed, but it does not control better, like at all. If anything, the one improvement that was made was a greater difficulty scale, but even that's only marginal, and it only exists because the Wii's motion controls do not work for this game. They are not good. I'm gonna lump these two ports together because of how similar they are, but the Wii port is definitely about 3 points lower than the rating I'm about to give, okay? With all of that out of the way, I'll give Dave Mirra BMX Challenge a 6 out of 10. If you've been here for a long time, you probably expected me to give this game a higher rating than the public perception. You know, that's just common around here. But if you didn't, and you're new around here, I'll tell you exactly why I did and why I often give credit to games that usually don't get it. It's not just because I've played the worst garbage imaginable, because I have. It's not just because I know what programming and design are like. It's not because I like to be contrary to everybody's popular opinion. It's because there is a real formula to how I approach talking about and looking at every single aspect to every single one of these games. If it ever feels like I'm being unfair, or what I'm saying is so misaligned that it's just impossible to agree with, then I don't expect you to agree with me. I just call it like I see it. I take on these games knowing who worked on them, what I'm getting into kind of, and I pay very close attention to the biggest complaints. I often don't have the same experience as other people do. I'm a little more cold and calculated about it. Plenty of people disagree with my take on Pro Skater 3+4, or on American Wasteland, or on Pro Skater 5 as a great example. But in terms of raw, real function, I have to treat those games equal to every other video game in the world. Like, all of these things are interrelated in specific ways, and I have to treat them that way. So when I see things that work, I point out things that work, and I don't just hate everything that's a part of a game that wasn't what everybody wanted. This gets a 6, because in very similar fashion to Pro Skater 5, it's more notorious to the fans who didn't get what they were expecting. I can see why it didn't do well, there's no real question there, but I can also see that Left Field Productions did the best they could transforming the MTX Mototrax engine into the Dave Mirra engine. This wasn't a team of dudes that was trying to disrespect the series. This was a team that actually enjoyed making this kind of game, given a shit deadline to pull off what was essentially a total conversion mod of an already damaged version of a great game. I forgot to cover MTX Mototrax for the PSP when I made that video, but it really does have a lot of the same issues that this game has. So yeah, I don't think it's garbage. By way of raw gameplay, it's actually better than Pro Skater 5. But there's no licensed music, it's missing real-world footage, it doesn't stack up to the rest of its series, there's an absolute 0 difficulty temperature, and the high score mode was a missed opportunity to just do classic goals. The maps would have allowed for it. They make sense for that idea. With some more time, maybe a little bit of extra money, this game could have been a fucking amazing entry in this series. It isn't, and that's sad, but I'm still happy that I played it because I definitely don't think it's a bad game. Oy, and now that I'm done with all of that, I think I'm gonna do Guitar Hero next. I haven't really spent a whole lot of time thinking about what the game immediately after this one would be, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna be Guitar Hero because I just need a break from action sports, and I need a break from platformers, and I need a break from adventure type things. I need something simple, something arcadey, and something very straightforward so I can clear my mind, reason, and come back to the SSX GBA series after the fact. Huge thank you to Dakota S for supporting the channel with a donation. That was fucking awesome. If you want to see these videos get a little better and want me to put them out in a more timely manner, then a link to the Ko-Fi page to donate is in the description. I've rambled your ear off long enough for one video, so until next time, thank you, and have a nice day.